through predictive programming in the 80s, 1987 film Robocop, where we see AI and basically a giant smart grid, patrolling and policing big megalopolises, big dystopian megacities. And I think that is where we're going. That's where the globalists are taking us. There's a recent piece that details this from out of Davos, security issues 2030 or something to that effect. I forget the name of it, but you can Google that and find it. And this, much like all the other Rockefeller white paper documents, projects the future of where all these psyops are intended to take us. And I think that's the crucial point to remember here, is that what I've talked about in probably 100 articles at Jay's Analysis is the implementation of the AI smart grid and the giant smart cities, which is what IBM talks about publicly building. And that's where we're going, and that's what I think we have to be really concerned about. So all of these tensions, they are part of a long-term strategy to basically get everybody moved into megacities. They'll be forced off of land and so forth for environmental reasons, and basically concocted and invented environmental nonsense. Then you'll be stuck in some hellhole megacity in a, basically a carton-size apartment living over a Target or something, or inside of a Target or a Walmart, as I said several years ago. It's actually coming true now. There's actually Target cities. And this is all part of the long-term globalist strategy. So, but to get there, you've got to have the constant clash, the constant alchemical blending and mixing and smashing together right out of Manichaeanism to produce the convergence, to produce the synthesis. And that's what's crucial in all this, and what is absolutely true from an alchemical, esoteric, philosophical, and geopolitical perspective. This hyped and engineered helter-skelter race war, as I've been saying, is, I think, the existing establishment in the United States desiring a long-term strategy of tension, and it has, as I said, numerous historical precedents, and I think that's what we have to understand. And to say this tension is exacerbated and stoked by the ruling liberal elite is not, of course, to say that there aren't real differences. Rather, on the contrary, I think cultures and civilizations produce different societies, and this is a natural result of the soul of that people, and I think this is a good thing. So real diversity, in reality, is a natural good, and I think that the rightful existence of different ethnoi, to use the Greek term, different peoples, which is a classical Orthodox notion, is real and good. And in our day, with the rise of post-Enlightenment atomistic individualism, what you get is not diversity, but a diversity that's an anti-diversity. It's a fundamental dogma of doublethink, where the subversive goal of diversity is actually the obliteration of real distinctions and differences. And this is what we see with all the social justice warriors. And, it's through this crucial intentional contradiction and Orwellian double mind that two completely oppositional notions that we saw with Manson, you're God and the devil, you're good and evil, right? This subversive goal can actually be accomplished, and this is because of the doublethink that's held in the minds of most of the liberal Western world. Now, on the one hand, the United States, for example, is the essence of the liberal West, and it purports to represent democracy, freedom, egalitarianism, but at the same time it wages wars of foreign aggression for the establishment of the Pax Americana. So while it extorts the natural resources and inverts and destroys the cultural heritages of other nations that are guilty of the heinous crime of simply not being the U.S. or being diverse in reality from the U.S.'s liberal imperium, it has to be destroyed. In this regard, I think diversity is an ideology of a managed dialectic that exists in the minds of many of the West, but I think there are some signs that this is, starting to fade. People are kind of waking up to this, that the liberal project, the European Union, all this stuff, it doesn't work, and it really destroys things and makes things worse by design. Now, the dark inner logic of this nefarious imperium is precisely the self-destruction of the domestic populace, right, as well as the nations where it spreads its aggression. And so whether it be through the soft power of NGOs and think tanks and cultural toxicity that's exported, or through the outright war of proxy attacks, it's the same effects. The so-called open society is open only to the dominance of the anti-human collectivism, a collectivist identity that is only united in its foundational premise of the negation of liberty. And in political philosophy, negative liberty denotes a philosophical starting point of negation of collective obligations and ontological realities. And so it's in this sense that America now represents the actual brave new world that Shakespeare's Tempest prophesied it would be. We can also think of Bacon's New Atlantis, right, where you have the alchemical prophecy of this engine of Atlantis' power, a great machine by which to project full spectrum synthetic illusions and subversion upon the globe under the laughable guise of human rights. Now, the Enlightenment ideas of liberty were basically summarized in liberty from, liberty away from, negation. All external constraints that are embodied in the state, and this is, I think, logically has to be extended to what in philosophy is sometimes called epistemic self-consciousness. And this means a worldview or a belief system where over time people become more and more consistent with their foundational premises. If in the foundational belief system or maxims or premises there's a contradiction, and certainly many of the Enlightenment empiricist views were contradictory, the progeny will feel these effects, where the sort of guiding Geist moves these societies towards more internal consistency. And this consistency can have a dark side, where the false can become more and more false and corrupt. This is the case with America as the Enlightenment experiment, having chosen its destiny as a satanic development, an anti-imperial imperium. And as such, it is now inherent within the anti-logic of America to raise the worst, to exalt the worst, and to seek to subvert globally. So I think seen in this way, America as a global force and ideology, which is the goal of all these psyops, because they may happen in America, something like Manson, but you'll notice it's the same strategy elsewhere, right, with all these think tanks, National Endowment for Democracy, all of these things that are projected elsewhere through NGOs and soft power. It's the same patterns. Rockefeller Foundation funding for women's rights, which actually means vaccines, right? It's the same plan. And so this simulacrum of a nation, this anti-metaphysical imperium, is at war with all that is traditional, natural, and organic. It's energized with a sort of demonic force that characterizes the rings of Dante's Inferno. It's an LSD-Disneyland nightmare that must be extended globally to bring the post-human imperium of a fanatical monoculture whose war on distinctions and real diversity eats its own, quote, humanism like a self-devouring Ouroboros. And so in this sense, the Ouroboros is a perfect dialectical symbol of the classical mythos of America as both Brave New World and Atlantis. It's a necromantic sorcerer's Atlantis, where the alchemical cauldron of black and white must be combined into violent chemical reaction to dissolve and destroy both ethnoi as well as others, arising from the fact that the ruling elite seek to be post-human. jaysanalysis.com. If you like what you hear here in this little sort of mini expose, check out my work over at jaysanalysis.com, where I go into great depth and detail into actual globalist manuscripts and tomes. Particularly right now, I'm 3 or 4 lectures deep into Dr. Carol Quigley's Tragedy and Hope, and the work is actually based on the Council on Foreign Relations archives, and so Quigley's treatise is an apologia, an apologetic for the existing establishment and basically the bankers running all of this stuff and moving us into a global new world order, so to speak. And you can subscribe to my lectures there. The first hours are always free, and then the full lectures can be obtained by $4.95 a month at PayPal or $60 a year. It helps me keep the website going and putting food on the table. So thank you for listening. Be sure and check out jaysanalysis.com and 21stcenturywire.com as well. You can buy my book, Esoteric Hollywood, Sex, Cults, and Symbols of Film. and in film at Jay's Analysis or at Amazon. And you can also get Jamie Hanshaw's book, Hollywood Mind Control.